nothing is hidden. We talking, so get in.
Listen.
Beyond hands where nothing is hidden. We talking, so get in.
Listen.
Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, it's Mary Bly here with The Unhinged. If you would like to be a guest on my show, please email me at marybly@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Find The Unhinged, a Mary Bly show on YouTube, Spotify, Rumble, iHeartRadio, and Music Amazon. And if you're into the fringe, conspiracy theories, paranormal, all the good things, then follow my guy Tony Mars with a Melted Broadcast. Welcome back to another heartfelt episode where we dive deep into the tales of human perseverance and strength. Today, I have a very special guest, Natalie, who has authored a compelling book detailing her son's journey with complex regional pain syndrome, CRPS, also known as reflex sympathetic dystrophy, RSD. This condition, known for its excruciating pain, has challenged her family in unimaginable ways. Natalie's book offers not just an account of the medical battle, but also serves as an inspiration, showing how families can navigate through the darkest times with love, hope, and unwavering support. Join us as we explore the emotional, physical, and psychological landscapes of living with CRPS, RSD, through the eyes of a mother who turned her family's struggles into a beacon of hope for others. Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Natalie. It's good to have you back again.
Great to see you, Mary.
Good. So this time on this podcast, we're talking about, you're going to talk about your son and the invisible illness. So you do have a book out. What I want to start off by asking you first is, can you share what initially inspired you to write this book?
Yes. I think if people are familiar with your podcast a little bit, I've kind of journeyed into advocacy a little bit and finding my own voice and advocating for myself and my childhood. And naturally, this book had to be written because I have a son, my youngest son, who was diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome at the age of 11. He had just turned 11. And the reason I wanted to write this book, the children's book, is because children need an avenue that they can read a book and it doesn't seem quite as scary and they don't feel so alone in their diagnosis, and they can see that there is hope, that there is an outcome, even if you have to keep going on and living with CRPS, because there's no cure for CRPS. If you have to go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to ask, what is more specifically, I know the terminology that you said, but what is that?
Well, CRPS, or complex regional pain syndrome, it's also called RSD, but the more common acronym is CRPS, is a chronic pain condition. It is a overreaction of your brain and your nervous system to an injury or no injury at all. Not, you could fall down or trip or bump your leg on something, bump your arm or something, and it's your body's overreaction to that injury that should be a minute injury. Sometimes people get it after surgeries and they have a very hard time healing and they're not knowing why. They're experiencing an exorbitant amount of pain, and it's because they are coming down with this nervous system injury. And Gage, he was knocked down at school one day by a little boy while he was in the lunch line. And by the time I got to him at school to pick him up at the end of the day, it was a private school, so I picked him up every day. He already had his sock and his shoe off and was crying and said that he felt like all the bones in his foot were crushed. But I knew from what he had described that there was no way that he had that kind of injury. So that's where our journey began.
So you wrote a book about his journey. Can you share with us what was the most challenging part of writing your son's journey with CRPS to document, and how did you approach it?
I wanted to make it, as I've done I have another children's book, and the topics are quite heavy. My topics are not light topics. So I wanted the graphics to be bright. I didn't want them to look like the boy in the book, which is Gage. I didn't want him to look, downtrodden and depressed. And I wanted them to see that he's just an average little boy. This is just an average little boy who was playing football, baseball, and basketball the day before. And the next thing you know, he has this injury. And I made time pass in the book because Gage had it for several years. So in the children's book, he grows up and you see him progress throughout the book with different doctors and different therapies and going to physical therapy. So I wanted them to make it as connecting to them in their lives. They're going to be dealing with this. So I wanted them to see those same images.
So he fell and he started having pain. What did you took him to the doctor? What did they say?
Well, when he came home that night, he still had his sock and his shoe off. And, as kids do, he sat on his foot to do his homework. And that's where the real nightmare began. He was saying his foot was throbbing. He thought it was broken. But after he sat on it, it turned into a nightmare. And I didn't know if we should take him to the emergency room. Should I take him to our pediatrician? What should I do? Well, we had a podiatrist, luckily, a foot doctor. And so I reached out to her and she said, yes, come in as soon as you can. We'll get him in. We'll get him seen. But in the meantime, I called his pediatrician because it was going to be a few days. The pediatrician had no idea what was going on. Just told us to go to the emergency room. I don't know what's happening. He doesn't have any broken bones that I can see. Go to the emergency room. Somehow I knew the emergency room was not going to help us because I knew something was going on. I didn't know what was going on, but we went to the podiatrist. And strangely enough, I had an acquaintance at that time whose little girl about a year before was diagnosed with this mystery pain illness. And I would see her story every now and then. And I would, like, oh, that poor little girl. It sounds like she's going through a lot of pain. And I remembered the name of it. So I said it to the podiatrist. I said, do you think he has CRPS? I'm wondering. And she goes, that's exactly what I think he has. She goes, I absolutely think he has that. She goes, but I'm going to have to get you a referral. She couldn't diagnose him as a podiatrist. So I got a referral for a neurologist. And that began the next step. The very tragic part about CRPS is that you have to have a diagnosis in order to begin a treatment. And until you get that diagnosis with that magical referral, you're in limbo. So we went to the person she referred us to, and they didn't believe Gage. They said he didn't have that bad of pain. He was going to be fine. He probably just sprained his ankle. And then we went to several neurologists. And it's very hurtful, but this is the path with CRPS. And I'm not saying it to malign the physicians. It is a natural course with CRPS. You are not believed. No one believes you. And so my little boy had just turned 11. And I don't think they thought he understood them when they were talking to us. They looked at us and said that Gage was embellishing and said that he's embellishing. It's, there's no way he has this. Gage then was furious. When we left the physicians, he's like, no one believes me. No one believes me. He goes, he's saying I'm making this up. He goes, why would I want to make this up? Right. And so we just had to keep going. We just had to keep plugging along. And finally, one day on my own, I wrote some pain doctors at Riley Hospital, our children's hospital downtown. And I told them the journey we had been on for several months. And luckily, one of the physicians that didn't believe Gage went ahead and prescribed him physical therapy and said, for his ankle, let's just, maybe he's rolled it. Let's do some physical therapy. So several months went by and I finally decided, well, I'm going to put him in this physical therapy because I don't know what's happening. So while he was in physical therapy, I found a pain physician at Riley Hospital. And luckily, it was about month 7.5 or 8. And as soon as they saw him, they diagnosed him with CRPS.
Well, that's got to be frustrating. Is it because doctors aren't aware? Is it like not a common illness? Is that why?
It's a very rare illness, and especially in children. It's progressing more, and you see it more in children now. But this was, 10, 13 years ago, and you didn't see it as often in children. And it's very difficult even for an adult to get diagnosed, because the reason I titled the book An Invisible Illness is because Gage is one of the CRPS patients that didn't have any outward exhibition of his foot. He didn't have any redness. He didn't have any mottling. He didn't have, sometimes the nails get hard or brittle. And a lot of times it gets atrophied. The muscles atrophy and there's an outward appearance of it. Gage had none of that. His foot looked like a regular foot and no one believed him because his foot looked totally normal.
Man, I can't even imagine that. The pain that, I'm an adult and I can't handle pain that much. I can't even imagine an 11-year-old months going through this. So when you finally got the diagnosis, what was the next course? I know you did the treatments, but what does that consist of?
Well, the first thing they educate you on is the McGill pain scale. The McGill pain scale is the scale that they measure pain. It like starts off with like an aspirin when you have a headache. That's like, down at the very bottom at like a 1 to a 5. And it progresses through cancers, having a baby with no medication, no epidural. It goes to an amputation. CRPS is at the very tip top of the pain scale. On a 1 to 50 scale, CRPS pain is ranked at a 46.
Wow, that's pretty high.
All this time, Gage had no medication. He had no pain relief. He had nothing. He was doing physical therapy and letting people he would describe his foot as being on fire. He felt like it was burning from the inside out. And he would beg to have his foot amputated. In his weakest, most painful moments, he would cry and say, please, let's just remove it. Let's just start over. And so when you meet the physician, they tell you the scale and they ask Gage where you're at. And he's like, I'm off the chart. So they do a 1 to 10. Where are you at? And he's like, I'm a 10 plus. And unfortunately, again, there's no cure and there's no immediate, obvious treatment for every CRPS patient. They try something different with every patient. So they began putting him on a drug called gabapentin. Gabapentin is a nerve medication to calm the nerves. And they put him on, unfortunately, put him on hydrocodone. And they put him on doses that are recommended for adult cancer patients because they're trying to get him some relief. But what it does, it changes your little boy. It changes your child. These medications create a brain fog so thick that they don't even know if they're coming or going. They still have the pain and they're still expected to go to school. They're still expected to do their physical therapy. They're still expected to, act, just like a normal child. And on the days that my little boy would actually make it to school, his teacher would belittle him and say that it's not that bad. It's not that bad. You're here. It's not that bad. And then when he was on crutches, she instead of going through the doors of the building where you wouldn't have to enter through stairs, she always entered through stairs. And she would make my little boy crawl on his hands and knees up the stairs to go to lunch every day.
That's horrible.
It's horrible. But that is how it is ingrained in people's minds. They don't see anything. They don't see it. So they think your little boy is exaggerating. He just doesn't want to be at school. And it's a painful. I don't think people understand. And it's because it's CRPS. It's just not known. It's so rare.
Now, for those that know, and I know specifically, gabapentin and hydrocodone. Gabapentin is a prescription that I was put on for my fibromyalgia.
Okay.
Now, I cannot. I'm going to say this as an adult taking gabapentin. Okay, 300 milligrams 3 times a day, and then you got to do it again in the morning. No way could I handle that. I could not function the next day being on gabapentin. Yes. I was so brain fog. I just wanted to go to sleep. And then you add on the hydrocodone, both of which can be addictive drugs as well.
Right.
Now, I had to stop that. So I cannot imagine that an 11-year-old child is put on that. And how do you expect him to function if I, as an adult, or we as an adults that take gabapentin, and people out there, that are taking these medications know very well how it makes us feel, especially when you're adding hydrocodone to the gabapentin.
Absolutely.
There's no way.
There's no way. And his teacher would call me and say, Gage was here and he left his books on purpose on his desk. And I'm like, he doesn't know where he is half the time. I'm like,
correct.
I'm sorry he left his books there, but it is not on purpose. He's probably just trying to function and get out the door so he can get home. It was brutal. And the adults just would not understand. They had no compassion. And it was very difficult. I mean, it was difficult for me as a mom because you want to protect your child and you don't even know what's going on with your child. You're like, I don't understand why this is taking him over. What has happened? Like, why is he exhibiting all this pain when all he did was get bumped and knocked down in the hallway? Like, why? And there's really no explanation. There's no rhyme or reason. They have dated it back centuries, but one of the earliest documented was the Civil War when people were having limbs amputated. They would get their limbs amputated and then they would get CRPS in the appendage. And that appendage, they said, hurt worse than having the amputation. And
Wow.
doctors couldn't understand it. So it's a very mysterious illness. And again, they throw whatever they think is going to stick. They're like, well, this worked for somebody else. Maybe it'll work for you. Now, in hindsight, I would never, ever put my child on gabapentin. I would never do that to him. But I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know anything about that drug. I didn't know anything about what we were experiencing. Years later, Gage experienced another illness after CRPS, and they want to put him on gabapentin. And he and I both looked at each other. We're like, no way. No, we're not doing that again. Because he would literally call his pillow a football. We called it that he had like a word dyslexia, that his brain, he would see something and call it something else. He would call, like a pizza, a basketball. He had, it was just not there. And what I've learned is that gabapentin forever destroys brain cells in your brain, and you don't get them back. And they're not coming back. They're gone.
Yeah, gabapentin treats nerve pain.
Right.
But so. Let me ask you this: what was Gage like prior to this happening?
He was such a gregarious, social little guy. The year before, he was on his student council at school. He is an accelerated student. He's an honor student. He played baseball, basketball, football. Very funny, little sarcastic guy. Had a great sense of humor. He was our family firecracker. Like if we would be at a restaurant and if we needed a drink and a waitress wasn't coming, he'd be 4 or 5 and he would take our cup and go get a drink at the little, just stand and come back. Dude was on fire. He was feisty. Yeah, he was hilarious. So then when this illness came, it totally changed him. We didn't recognize him anymore. He was in pain 24/7 a day, all the time.
So now you've got the pain scale. Now you've got the treatment. What's next? What's happening next?
Yep. So
in this
basically
journey?
What they do is they want you to try this course of medication, the gabapentin, the hydrocodone, and they give you, weeks, months to try to see if that works. And, slowly you realize he's also in physical therapy. Now, I do have to give huge props to the physical therapy. It turns out that his physical therapist at our local hospital was wonderful. He actually had a child of his own who had CRPS very briefly. And so he said, here's what we're going to do, buddy. We're going to use that foot. You got to use that foot, even though you don't want to. And that's the one thing I would make known to any parent who gets this new diagnosis. You got to throw away your heart for a little bit. You got to make that child use that appendage. They have to keep using it. As much as you want to let them sit and be still because it's throbbing and it's really hurting, they got to use it. So he would have him on the treadmill. And then they had this therapy called fluidiotherapy. And they put your appendage in this little chamber and it whips around very minute particles of corn husks. And it's this warm like dust that just, hits your appendage all over it, just very lightly and slightly to try to get you used to that feeling of it being touched again. He really enjoyed that therapy. Now, did it really help? Not so much, but it gave him a little bit of relief. And then they would put the foot in a warm tub and they would, swirl stuff around it. They had him on the treadmill. They had him jumping. They had him using it. And they were trying to teach him to be distracted in the same time, to do something and try to forget about it. And then also at Riley Hospital, they got him seeing a psychologist. And I've never had any experience with any therapy. I've never gone to a therapist. And I didn't know what to expect for my little boy, and he didn't know what to expect. But Dr. Scott was incredible. He started teaching Gage. At that time, he loved Minecraft because he was little. And we were getting worried because Gage was spending so much time in his room, and we didn't want him just staring at a screen all the time and being alone. And so we were monitoring his screen time, not letting him be on his games and things. Dr. Scott said, let him set up an hour, let him play that game, but make him stand on his foot. Don't let him stand there and hop and not use it. Stand on the foot. And slowly, Gage would forget about it for a little bit while he was playing his game. And he would say, hey, I forgot that my foot hurt while I played that game. And slowly that therapy was really huge for Gage. You have to have a distraction technique when you have CRPS. You have to find a way to get yourself out of it. If it's reading, if it's painting, if it's playing a game, something that helps.
Yes. I think I read briefly or saw somewhere where I wouldn't say it's a side effect, but one of the things that happens with somebody who's diagnosed with CRPS is like the mental status, the depression and stuff. Is that I know that earlier you were saying you kind of saw him changing.
Yes.
How did it get bad? I'm glad that he got physical therapy
Psychology,
for it.
yes.
Yeah, how is that?
That was important because he was getting situational depression. He had never been a depressed little boy, but because he now had this new change of life, he wasn't at school. He wasn't with his friends. He wasn't playing sports. No one believed him. Even when we finally got a diagnosis, his teachers still didn't believe him. We took him one day to a basketball game so that he could watch his teammates play basketball. While he was there, he was in so much pain, he fainted. He passed out.
Oh, no.
And several of his little friends came running over to him during the game. They saw Gage pass out. They left the game. They came over to him. Those little kids got an eye view of that. So when we started telling the psychologist, this is the kind of thing that Gage is dealing with. He sees his buddies and then he can't participate. He's at home. He's very sad. He's depressed. And the therapy did really help him. It really did help him. Dr. Scott would give him these sheets to take home to read and to study and to practice and to get himself, if he started feeling really depressed or he started feeling an exorbitant amount of pain, here's the techniques you need to do to get out of it. And it really did help him.
Yeah. See, I don't think a lot of people, that's rough. Let me just be careful what I say right now.
Yeah.
But depression and anxiety and all those things is real when it comes to children. And I'm glad that Dr. Scott was able to help him and is helping him. Because a lot of times I think that we as adults, we miss that in children. Because we're not feeling what they're feeling. It's an invisible illness, like you say. So if they're looking fine, we think they're fine, but he may not be in pain, but the mental status probably is affecting him. So that's what happened with like my grandson when he was diagnosed with cancer, with leukemia.
Oh, okay.
So he was the same way. He had just the year prior, he was in football. They went all the way to the championship. Very active, kid. And he was 10 years old at the time of his diagnosis. And
wow.
And it does affect them mentally in the depression because he was like that. And I remember him saying, why me? Why me? So I feel, and they did get him, therapy too, as a psychiatrist, a psychologist to help him out. So it's very important for the children to get that care. So I'm glad that there's a community that will help in those situations, get him to, open up and release his feelings. How old is Gage now?
Gage is 24 now.
24. Okay.
24.
So
he had for 3.5 years, about almost 3.5 years. And he went into remission. He went into full remission. But then with many, many, many CRPS parents, once your child has that ailment, it opens a door. Their autoimmune system is never the same. They are always fighting something, or it takes them longer to get over something. Gage, at the very end of CRPS, had mono like 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
He just couldn't catch a break. He would just start to feel a little better, and then he would get mono. And not just like mono, like mono's bad. I don't know if you've ever had mononucleosis, but you're down for a good month, like a solid month of just not wanting to do anything. But Gage, it would be months and months. It would just take. But after he got remission, then he was diagnosed with a different ailment. The poor kid. He got this disease called new daily persistent headache, and he had a headache for 24 hours a day,
Oh, no.
7 days a week. And it just kept going. He just kept trying to fight these hurdles to get back to a new normal. And knock on wood, today he's doing really well.
Good. How does Gage feel about you writing a book about his illness?
It's very emotional for the both of us, honestly. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but we were together all the time. It's a very isolating disease. My husband had to keep working. I had a part-time job. I had to quit it. He had to keep working so that we could pay for these shots, so we could pay for, epidurals he was going in. We had to get the treatment that finally, I think, jump-started his foot to get better was this capsaicin treatment, where they coat the foot in this cream that's the capsaicin. Comes from hot peppers. And it burnt the nerve endings on his entire foot to try to start his foot back over. He had to keep paying for all this. So Gage and I were together, every day, all day. Because when I quit my job, I was so worried about him being depressed and alone. He would be awake all night. And I didn't want him by himself all night long and struggling. So I would stay up with him. And then I would stay up in the day. He would finally go to sleep like a day or two later. He would be up for 48 hours at a stretch because of the pain. And then I would stay up and I would research. I would be online. I'd be looking like, what can we do? Where can we go? How are we going to fix this? And when I told him I was going to write a book about him, I was going to do the children's book, and then I was going to do the parent book. He was like, Mom, that's incredible. That's so beautiful. I really appreciate it. So he's my guy. He's my hero. I don't know how he did all this. So I'm super proud of him.
So, Natalie, I'm going to ask you a question, and it might be a hard question because I know I'm asking it because I know what I went through with my grandson. But I wanted to ask you, how hard was it for you how did you maintain your sanity through it all? Were there times that you broke down too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I allowed myself to feel it. It was hard because in the beginning, I'm just trying to keep him at school, so he has some semblance of normalcy, and I was still working. We would argue and scream at each other the whole way to school. You're going to go to school, just for an hour, just go. And he's like, I'm not doing it. And you don't care about me. And I'm like, I do care about you. That's why I'm trying to get you there just for a little bit. Dude, you got to still go to school. And we would just, and then he'd get out of the car and I would cry the whole way to work. I would walk into work and they would see me come in and they'd just be like, they would know, I had to go in the back. I'd have to cry, suck it up, get it all back together. And I was a bank teller. So I was trying to get my face all back, and I'd go back out there and I would work, and it was very difficult. And it was very difficult being the mom and knowing you're trying to get your kid to do something you really don't want him to do, right? I really don't want you to go to school. I want you to go home and lay down and feel better and rest, but you have to go to school. You have to do these things. We all have to do things we don't want to do. And so when I told him I was writing this book, I think he started getting a little introspective and thinking about it all again. Because sometimes we push it out of our minds. Mm-hmm. Because it's almost, if you think about it, it's going to come back. It's like, right. I don't want to think about it. It's gone. Things are good. And so when I told him about it, he goes, Mom, I was so mean to you. He goes, I yelled at you all the time. I was like, buddy, it's okay. You were sick. It's okay. Yeah. He goes, no, it really wasn't okay. I'm like, it is okay. It's okay. It was just the heat of the moment. We were both trying to figure it out.
Well, he was just, I'm sure it had a lot to do, because I talked to my grandson about it, but I'm sure it had a lot to do with the pain that he was going through. You're not going through this. He's going through this. Yeah. Nobody understands him. Well, hell, the teachers didn't even believe him. It's something that he was dealing with, and out of frustration, probably because of the pain and everything else happening. And he's not the normal Gage he was prior to this. I'm
Yeah.
sure it was, because then I have to tell my grandson too, because there were times when he tested my gangster. He
Yeah.
tested the gangster in me.
Yeah.
But I had to step back and remember, okay, he's going through something that I'm not going through and I don't understand. And the same
Yeah.
thing for Gage.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how,
It
and-
was hard. And I would,
Mm,
I'm not super religious, but I would pray to God, just give it to me. Just give it to
mm,
me. I will take it. I will figure it out. Just give it to me. Just take it out of him. And I don't care, what I have to do, give it to me. Just I'll take it. Obviously it didn't happen that way. That's not how life works. But
right.
I gladly would have taken it just like that because my little boy was just not the same little boy. He just wasn't.
So what's he up to now? What's he getting into now?
He Gage is a go-getter. He is, I think because he missed out on so much of his childhood and he had to grow up so fast. We struggled with school because of, ailments and things. So he left school and got his GED. He graduated early and actually got honors in all of his courses when he got the GED and got a scholarship. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
he ended up, yeah, dude is smart. He's just been sick. So then
Yeah.
he went and became a phlebotomist, but it happened right during COVID. So never really got to achieve that dream, unfortunately. But
Well, that's my favorite. He can do it. That's my favorite. That's what I've always loved to do is draw people's blood. I'm not good with
really,
you drawing my blood, but I'll draw your blood all day long, every day. And when there were hard sticks, they say get married. Yeah, I've been in
oh,
the field for years, but yeah, CRPS was something I had never heard
yeah,
of,
it's
either
rare.
until I started seeing your thing,
Yeah.
your post about it, and then your book about it. That I'm glad is he going to get back into it or what,
Well, he
what's
actually works where my husband works now, and also with our other son as well. It's a big pharmaceutical company, one of the biggest ones in the United States. So he works there. He bought his first home last year.
Oh, wow. Congratulations to him. Yay.
Yeah, and got engaged a few months ago, and actually used my wedding ring from Tom and I's.
Oh,
Yeah, so I gave him
that's
that
so
ring
special.
and he proposed to her. So I was like, now we have a family heirloom. So he's
Yes.
engaged, he's got a new home, and dude is killing it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. All
Yeah.
right. So I have some more questions for you, Natalie. I'm happy to hear that he's doing good. And I love that you gave him Tom's ring to give to his fiance. That's beautiful. Yeah. So, all the viewers know Natalie's a reoccurring guest, and we had her on when she told what the Melted broadcast. So when she told her
Yeah.
story about Tom. So, yeah, guys, go check that out too. She's got a lot of
I got
good
a lot of
stuff.
stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What has been the response from the CRPS community to your book?
It's been incredible. The children's book, I went back into some of these groups that I used to belong to when Gage was sick. And some people still remembered me and Gage from years ago. And it was incredible. So, I don't want to just go in there and promote something, but I'm like, hey, if you feel like this is something that, you're interested in, I'm doing a children's book and I want to help kids. The whole point of this thing is to advocate and to get CRPS out there. So all of the parents have been really wonderful, and they got Gage's book, and I think it's probably the best-selling book of all of my books because it's gotten such a great response. And it went number one. It was a bestseller for several days in a bunch of categories, and the parents are posting pictures of themselves with the book, and
Oh,
so nice, so heartwarming. So I have a parent companion book that's coming out, and it'll actually be able to be bought with it if you want, but you can buy it separately. But this book is more for the parent side so that you don't feel so alone. And I give you some ideas of what you can try and what you can do. And if they suggest this therapy to you, here's what I know about it, and here's how I feel about it, that kind of thing.
oh, that's important too, because not only do the children have a book, but the parents too, so they don't feel lost.
Yes,
And
I felt so lost and overwhelmed by everything that was being suggested. And, like I made a friend during CRPS in therapy. Our therapist doing the physical therapy had a little girl that had just been diagnosed with CRPS, asked if he could put our families together and we could meet. Just after meeting her, she was contemplating getting her daughter's leg amputated. She said, I'm
Wow.
thinking of doing this. She's miserable. And I was very adamant. I was like, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. That's a forever kind of thing. Like, my personal opinion is they're under 18. Let them make that decision when they're 18 if that's something they want to do. I would not do that. Years later, that little girl's walking again on both of her legs.
Oh,
So it's one of those things, like, that's the parent companion book. Here's my 2 cents. You can do what you want, but here's how I feel about it, and here's an experience that I went through.
right. So you said Gage was in remission. Is there a possibility that it can come back?
Oh yeah, there's
'Cause
always
you
a
said
possibility.
okay, because you
Yeah,
said there was no cure, right, for it?
there's no cure for it, and there's no known fix for it. They try different, like I was saying, different treatments, different methods, try to see if they can, get rid of the pain. Most people, once you get past the year point, don't ever achieve remission. You will always have it in some manner, some level of pain. Gage
Wow,
is one of the very rare few that had it for 3.5 years and achieved full remission. Now, he does say he doesn't feel like he can feel all of his foot. He says it is numb in certain parts because it is a nerve type disease, that it affects the nerves, but no pain is better than that pain.
can you describe a moment from your son's journey that was particularly transformative for your family?
You know, I would probably say, and this is no slight to his dad. His dad was a little slower to acknowledging what Gage was going through. He was like, I don't know, like, I just don't understand what's happening. And I didn't either, but I was like, I believe him. Something's happening. And I think the night that Gage came to the both of us and said he wanted to have his foot amputated, that's when we knew this was very real. Like, this is what's happening. A little boy that's 11 years old that wants to play sports doesn't want his foot amputated for no reason. And I think
Mhm.
for the both of us, it was like a light switch. We were like, okay, we've got to dive into this. We've got to figure this out.
That's hard to hear that an 11-year-old would be in so much pain that he would rather have his foot cut off.
Yes. Yeah. It's
Um,
tragic. I mean, it's really tragic. And I don't try to, like, belittle it or poo poo it or make it soft. It was hell. It was hell on earth. CRPS is a hell on earth disease for anyone that's going through it. Adult, child, anyone that I know that is still struggling with it. My heart and my prayers go out to them, because it is a very debilitating illness. It is.
okay, going back to the teachers who didn't understand. Okay, Natalie, I know that you are listen, I'm
We
gonna
know
ask
each
this
other. We know each
I'm gonna
other.
ask this question, because for the podcast, but I know in the past year, okay, so you're an advocate for quite a bit of the things that you've experienced in your past. So for those teachers that don't know, have you advocated are you sharing, like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, when Gage graduated high school, he was in a different school because he went to private school. So when he went to high school, it was our public school. So when he graduated early and he passed his GED and he got accelerated honors and got a scholarship, I wrote that fifth grade teacher. I I sent her an email, and I wasn't nasty. I really wasn't. I really could have been, but I wasn't. And I
Okay,
said,
somehow I knew that you were gonna say you did reach out to her, but okay, so let's
see,
what did you say in
because
this
we're
email?
alike. We're alike. And
Yeah.
I said, you had one moment to be kind. You had
Mhm.
one moment. And that was our moment, that we really needed that kindness. We really needed some empathy. And it was a Catholic school. So you would think there'd be a little extra level of kindness and
Right.
caring, and none from her. And I said, you had one moment to be kind and it would have changed our lives. It would have really been helpful. Instead, she was calling me every day and saying Gage was forgetting books on purpose. He was making it up. I need to talk to you because Gage isn't listening to me. I need to talk to you because Gage keeps wanting to go home. And we would have these conversations with her weekly. And finally, I tapped out and I let my husband deal with them. I said, because I'm not going to say anything nice. You want to talk
Mhm.
to her, you can do it. I'm out. I'm not doing it anymore. So when I sent that email and I said, I just want you to know, for consistency's sake going on, if you have another child in your classroom and their parents are struggling because their child has some new illness and they don't understand it, take compassion. Just take one moment and remember Gage and remember how this went for us and show that child some compassion. And I said, I would love to communicate with you if you'd like to talk about it. She never said anything back.
So she never wrote you, emailed you back or anything?
No. And then there's no compassion. If a parent reached out to me years later, you know what? I would be like, my bad. I feel, if I could take that all back, I would. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was so ignorant. I would love to have a do-over, but there was nothing. So I think it speaks about her.
Right. Well, Miss Teacher, whoever you are, please be kind. It's free, like really, and have some compassion. Because
Yeah.
you don't, as educators, well, educators, I feel, my opinion, and that's what's so great about this country is we can have opinions and we can
Yes.
we can agree to disagree respectfully. But I feel like as educators, yeah, I know they don't pay them a lot of money. They're there to teach, right? And
Right.
sometimes they're burnt out or whatever, but it doesn't matter. You if you see something, say something, you see that this child is looking this way or feeling sad or down, and he's not the same as he was or she was a few months ago, maybe something's wrong. Maybe look into it. Maybe talk to the parent about it instead of saying, oh, he's just making stuff up. She just wants to leave this and, oh, it's not real. She'll be okay. Like, I need y'all to do better. We all need to do better. We really do.
Yeah.
Like I said, kindness and compassion is free. Kim, it doesn't cost y'all anything. But anyways, off my rant. All right, I got I got some more questions. What misconceptions about CRPS do you feel your book addresses or clarifies?
I think it addresses, like we were discussing, the fact that it is a very real illness. It exists. It is very real. The misconception I think about CRPS is that because CRPS people are conditioned to keep going in spite of what they're going through. So eventually you see this child and you think, oh, they're better. No, they are going and going and going because they have to in spite of the pain. So there's a misconception like we've just discussed, teachers, your social activities, if you're out. And Gage was so afraid when he was little, I would be like, let's go to a movie. Let's distract ourselves. And he's like, what if someone sees me there? I wasn't at school today. And I'm like, dude, I don't care. Like, you deserve to be able to go to a movie if you want to go to a movie. And he was so afraid that someone would see him and think, oh, I'm making this up because I'm at a movie now. And that's the struggle. That's what I want to clear up as a misconception. You're allowed to be a sick person and smile. You're allowed to be in pain and laugh. You're allowed to go out and act like a human being in spite of what you're going through.
That's true. Okay. That's so hard. I'm so glad he's better though. And he's doing
thank
remission.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
for
so
sure.
lucky that we get to say that.
Yes. All right. So, for someone newly diagnosed with CRPS, what advice would you give based on your experience?
Use that appendage. Use it. I don't care if it's your arm, leg, foot, back, use it. And get on a very high regimen of vitamin C. Vitamin C is known to help boost the immune system. And it will sometimes boost this brain and nervous system when you're fighting that pain into rebooting and getting rid of that pain. It is known, it's a fact. So do the vitamin C, use that appendage, and ignore the doubters. Ignore the people that are doubting you and keep advocating for your child. One physician doesn't believe you, go to another one. Go to the next physician and they're kind of like, oh, here's what I think. Go to another one. It's not to get a second opinion in CRPS. It's get the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. Just keep going and advocate for your child.
Yeah, and then the book that's coming out for a parent, it's what's the name of the book that's coming out for the parents?
It's called It Hurts So Bad and Nobody Believes Me. One Mom's Guide to Raising a Child with CRPS/RSD.
Okay, so there's other information in there that could help
Yes.
someone newly diagnosed with that, right? Okay, so
Yes,
make
I've
sure you
listed
get
like,
that.
yes, medications, different treatments, physicians you're going to need in your life besides the neurologist and pain doctor, like a rheumatologist, like a
Mhm.
psychologist. I'd go down that whole avenue.
Okay. All right. So another question that I have, what do you hope the broader medical community learns or changes in response to narratives like yours?
That's a wonderful question. You know, I think moms uh, get a rough time when they go to a doctor and tell them they know what's going on with their child. So
Mhm.
many times in a lesser version, you take your child and say, "Hey, I think my child has an earache." And they're like, they've got a cold. Same thing with CRPS. I was telling doctors I thought this is what he had, and everyone told me no. Parents are advocates because they know their child.
Mhm.
Listen to the parent and also soothe the parent because it's a very scary time when you're learning your child has a disease that there's no known cure for.
I've had some doctor yeah, it unfortunately, we have some doctors that have no bedside manners, um, but I'm glad that, like Natalie says, don't give up, just keep on going to the next doctor for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and, I think moms are we're totally different from dads. That's 100%. Not to
Yeah.
say anything bad about the dads because you guys
Yeah.
rock too for those who
Yeah.
take care of your families. But
Absolutely.
moms have this intuition, and that something's not right with your child.
We carried them in our bodies.
Yeah.
We are connected in a different way. We just are.
All right. So a couple more questions. I know I'm just getting all these questions
No,
because
I
it's new to
I
me. I have no idea. So
I
you're
appreciate
educating
it.
me.
Yeah.
All right. All right. When you wrote this book, how did you cope with the emotional toll of reliving these experiences while writing your book?
uh, it's hard because again, I've not seen a doctor or a therapist about my side of CRPS, but I
Mhm.
know I have PTSD about CRPS. I do. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't even like to hardly voice it. And now I'm having to talk about it because I wrote the books about it. For
Mhm.
years, I never even wanted to mention it because I was worried if I mentioned it and voiced it, it would find us. And I know that's insane, but it's just that's how PTSD is. I just was so worried if I gave it a voice, it would come back. So I know I have PTSD about it. So
Yeah.
reliving it and thinking about it, it's funny, but I would tell myself
Mhm.
it's okay to write about it. Like it's okay. He's better. Everything's great. We have the best outcome possible for him. So it was difficult, but I'm not going to say my side was as difficult as Gage going through it. So I am honored to be able to advocate for people with CRPS because it needs a voice and it needs discussing and it needs to be better known.
If you can go back, is there anything you would do differently in your journey with your son or in writing, or in writing the book?
You know, I'm excited to see how the parent companion book does because I did the children's book and I work with a wonderful editor. And when I was discussing doing this children's book, she goes, "You know what? I think you have two books. I think you need to tell your side of it. And
Mhm.
then we'll do one for Gage for the little ones." She goes, "Two books." She goes, "That way you're going to be heard. You're going to get other parents heard." And so I'm super excited to see how the parent book goes because that was not my original idea. So I don't think I would do anything differently, but I'm very excited to see about where it goes and if it gets the topic out there to more parents, more people.
Yeah, that's a good point. When I interviewed my daughter and my grandson, it was about
Yeah.
his journey. But she also says there's a whole nother side to that journey, and it's my side of that journey.
Yeah.
And the sadness and depression and the times when she had to go privately in bathrooms and break down
Yeah.
to not alert your child that you were feeling this way and just put on that face like everything's going to be good. We got this.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that book is coming out because I was thinking about that. Like, That does make sense, Natalie, that you have a book for the children that's telling his story. Let's not forget the parents too that go through this, that have a child that's got these illnesses or diagnosed with cancers and all that. But there is another side to that, because you have to be the strong one for your child.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Always, and it's okay for the parents to have their moments too, to break down and feel like they need someone too. um I'm glad that he's doing good and is getting married. I'm so excited for that. I love the ring thing, Tom's
Oh,
ring that you gave to him for her. Yeah, for sure. um
thank
it's just
you.
so
And I'm so
exciting.
glad your grandson got to ring the bell. How incredible is that? That's the best
Yes.
outcome. That's awesome.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. It was exciting to see him ring the bell. It was canceled a few times because of the bad weather we had that, last year, but then he finally did it. So that was exciting. And, my daughter is like, there's another story and it's my
Yeah.
story. And I said,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Whenever you're ready, we can come on into this
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I'm all about it. Anyone that wants to come on can come on. I love your story. The books. So Gage's book, Gage and the Invisible Illness, One Boy's Battle with CRPS/RSD, is now available on Amazon. So guys, go check that book out. And then what's the name again? Give me the name of the.
It hurts so bad, and nobody believes me. One Mom's Guide to Raising a Child with CRPS/RSD.
Okay, and that's going to be available February 5th.
It is. It's available for pre-order now if you want to get the ebook or on Kindle.
Okay.
But the paperback comes out on February 5th.
So, Natalie, are you going to places and speaking about this? Are you advocating out there doing
My
public
life,
speaking?
yeah, my life has changed 90 degrees since, or 180 degrees, I guess. It's changed so much in the last 14 months. I am talking and speaking about a plethora of things. I am just putting myself out there. I grew up so quiet and so private and never told a soul anything. And I'm advocating. I was on the radio 2 weeks ago discussing CRPS. It was a wonderful station. And the lady that was also the co-host on the station has CRPS.
Wow.
So it was a great conversation to be had because she totally understands everything my little boy went through because she still has it. She's dealing with it. And so that was a great way to advocate. And then personally, I'm in a production next Friday where I'm telling another side of me, some stories, and it's a production that's downtown and it's going to be in front of a huge group of people. So I am all about using your voice for good. I never had a voice. I never was allowed to have an opinion. I was not raised that way. I was not championed. I'm championing my child. I am championing others that need it, that need me to be their voice. I'm happy to do it. So it's been a great journey.
Your website, please, for everybody to go out there. I know you can find the books on Amazon, but you also have a website too where they can find your other books. And so just so everybody knows, and Natalie's been on here, I don't know how many times, a couple times already.
3 times, yeah.
3
Two
times.
with you,
So,
one with, yeah.
Yeah, fight the DNA is her catchphrase for
See you later. Yep.
Down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah,
Narcissist.
I have
Okay.
See You Later, and then I have Down the Rabbit Hole of Narcissism was the other one, and then I have a children's book besides Gage's. It's called Daddy's Not Gone, and it's to help kids feel connected to loved ones that have passed on. So
Yeah,
I have a website. My website is NatalieMosleyClonauticBooks.com, and you can find me on Facebook. My name, a lot of times I'm posting under my book name, See You Later. So on Facebook, you can find me under See You Later as well.
Yeah, guys. So if you haven't gotten those other books, get them because, Natalie doesn't just write just to write out of thin air. She writes from personal experience, and overcoming those things.
Aww.
So
thank
yes,
you.
for
And
sure.
I
Love
have
it.
to say a big thank you to you for letting me talk about it and have a voice. And I love what you're doing as well. You're a great spokesman for things that have happened that are adverse as well. So I'm
Yes.
proud of you
Thank
as
you.
well. I am.
Thank you so much. You can tell we've known each other for a minute, but we're similar too. We're Gen X, so we've been through some stuff.
We've been through
Similar
some stuff, and we
yeah.
just don't care anymore. We're just going to say what we want to
Right.
say.
We're just Exactly. There you go. Fight the DNA, and also advocate for, CRPS, and also educate people who are not familiar with what it is, and, you know, kind of, guys, pay attention. And, I'm hoping some of those teachers and, those educators, some of those nurses, doctors, and anybody else who may have been kind of rude or were rude to people, you got to hear somebody's story. You can't just look on the outside and they look fine, that everything's okay on the inside,
Right.
because we're good at masking things. But children are good at saying, hey, this hurts, and so pay
Yeah.
attention and be kind, people. It's free. Again, be kind, it's free. All right. Natalie, you have one last thing to say to anybody out there? Any words of
You're,
advice or
you're not
anything?
alone. No matter what you're going through, be it the things I've gone through personally, my children, you are not alone. Reach out and talk to someone, and you'll be surprised. They might surprise you and help you as well. You're not alone. You're never as alone as you think you are.
Yes, and you've said that before many times. And you're a firm believer of that for sure. And all right, guys. Well, this is it. I'd like to thank Natalie for coming on again and educating us on CRPS, because I had no clue. I am so glad that Gage is good, that he's in remission. I hate that he had to go through, all that pain and stuff. So, wishing all the best for Gage and his new fiance. How does it feel to be a soon-to-be mother-in-law?
Oh, it's great. I'm so happy. And she's the best thing ever. So we love her. Paige, we love you. So it's all great. Paige
Well,
and Gage.
shout out.
Paige and Gage. How much
Oh,
better can that be, right?
that's perfect. Shout out to Paige and Gage. All
Yeah.
right, guys. All right, Natalie, until the next conversation. We'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beyond hinge where nothing is hidden. We talking so get in. Beyond hinge where nothing is hidden. We talking so get in. Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Beyond hinge where nothing is hidden. We talking so get in.
Listen.
Beyond hinge where nothing is hidden. We talking so get in.
Listen.
Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Mary, blah, blah.
Show.
Welcome